Good morning, I'm Tamara Shoemaker. In 1998, I was in my year at Reach, and while I was there, it was during the training session, 3-month time period that we were in Columbus, Ohio. And while I was there, there was one training session where a prophet came and he laid hands on us and prayed over each of us. And so when I went up and it was my turn, he laid his hands on me and prayed for me. And he told me that the Lord was calling me into two ministries. One was as a teacher, and one was as an intercessor. And he kind of went on about some of that for a little while. But someone typed out what he spoke over me, and they gave me the piece of paper later, which I kept in my Bible for many years, until a certain small person in my household, who shall remain nameless, tossed it, and I no longer have it, which I'm sad about because I like to go back and read over that sometimes. But in 2001, I went to college at Eastern Mennonite University, and I began with an English education major in secondary ed. And I was intending to teach high school English. And so when things began to happen in my life, various pressures, various circumstances, I ended up dropping that part of my education major, and I graduated in 2004 with my undergraduate degree, and it was only as an English major. There was no teaching license attached to it. During my time in Reach and the following year or two, I also had begun this intercessory prayer ministry. And again, it petered out as I felt the pressures of life and various circumstances. So in 2004, I had forgotten all about teaching and intercessory prayer. I met my husband and we began our lives together. We moved to Ireland for a year to minister there. We returned to the States and we had kids, 3 kids in kind of quick succession, I guess. Not that quick. It was at 2 years spaced apart. And we were firmly entrenched in the fog years, where the only existence is dirty diapers and diaper rash cream. And the only reality is multiple wake-up times at night to comfort crying babies. So this morning, I was reading through my homework from Priscilla Shirer, and as I'm working through her Jonah Bible study. So this morning's homework was pretty applicable. She pointed out to me the similarities between Jonah chapter 1 verse 2 and Jonah chapter 3 verse 2. Jonah chapter 1 verse 2 says, in the words of the Lord, "Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me." In Jonah chapter 3 verse 2, similarly, it says, "Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you." So what happened between those two verses? Fog happened. Jonah turning away from the Lord's chosen work, going on his own way. It took a storm and 3 days and nights in a fish's stomach to give him a second chance. So 23 years after the prophet prayed over me in our Reach training session, the Lord led me back to square one. Right? Nearly 3 years ago, I felt a strong tug to return to school to get my teaching license. It was inconvenient, to say the least. Most certainly, who wants to go back into debt after finally paying off college the first time, right? But the idea wouldn't leave me alone. It gnawed on me. Finally, I told my husband about it. I was assuring myself that he'd at least never go for it because, he just wouldn't. So I could leave that particular issue on the Lord's doorstep. And sorry, Lord, but my husband doesn't want me to do this, and I know that you're all about husbandly and wifely unity, so therefore this couldn't possibly be in your will. And I feel like the Lord loves it when we challenge him like that, right? Because we almost always get the shock of our lives after issuing that attitude. So imagine my shock when my husband not only agreed to it, but he agreed without arguing about it. So 3 years ago, I entered the Master's of Education graduate course at Eastern Mennonite University to get my TESOL licensure, and will graduate this May with a teaching license. COVID hit, in case anybody wasn't aware. The Lord opened up a prayer ministry right under my nose in the form of an online prayer group. And as I grew in the Lord and in the practice of intercessory prayer through that prayer group, the Holy Spirit began to show me visions, pictures. He began to speak directly to my heart. He began to wake me up early in the morning with words that were nearly audible in nature. And I discovered that this kind of closeness was the reward of obedience. He didn't stop there. He deposited my church directly in my lap. And he said, "Here's where I'm going to use you." And I didn't want to, I don't like being in leadership. I don't like heavy organizational responsibility. The Lord was calling me to it, and I wasn't really thrilled about it, right? but like Jonah, I'd learned my lesson. So I began to pray specifically over my church, and I blew the trumpet in Zion, declared a holy fast, gathered the people, consecrated the assembly, as it says in Joel 2:14-16. I started by myself, but others joined me, and we began to pray for the church and leadership, for the ministries within the church, for the congregation, for the people within the congregation. And as we were obedient, more words flowed in and more ministry opportunities. They became pressed down and shaken together and running over, pouring out into our laps, from Luke 6:38. I became busier than ever before, but I was more aware of the Lord's hand on me too than ever before. When Isaiah stood before the Lord and said, "Here I am, Lord, send me," the angel first touched his lips with a hot coal, refining him and taking away his guilt, from Isaiah 6:8. Fire burns fog, right? The flaming sun melts through the cloudy mist. Wherever you are today in your walk with the Lord, if you find yourself surrounded by fog, look up, check the sun. Check the S-O-N, sun. You might find that you're right back in Joppa where you began your fog, right? But the Lord is repeating the same song's second verse, sending you to Nineveh. This time, don't turn away into the confusing clouds. No matter how much you hesitate, have questions, or are afraid to move forward, it will always, always be worthwhile to surrender to what the Lord asks you to do, even if you don't want to. Who knows but that you've come to a position for such a time as this in your life, Esther 4:14. Hope that blessed you today. I'll see you later.